There is a moment tonight, right before your eyes close, when your hands finally stop trying to hold everything together. Let go and let God, that's not a phrase you say. It's a moment you arrive at, and I think you're closer to it than you realize. If you're the kind of person who spent the whole day carrying things nobody else could see, decisions, worries, the weight of people who depend on you, and you only set it down once the house goes quiet, this is for you. I know that weight. I've laid in the dark plenty of nights, hands still curled like I was gripping something, long after there was nothing left to hold. It took me years to understand that letting go wasn't giving up. It was finally trusting someone else with it. Tonight, we're going to practice something old and simple. You can lay it down now. Not because the problem is solved, because it was never yours to carry alone in the first place. Stay with me a while. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. This hour isn't about fixing anything. It's about remembering who already has it. There's a verse that men my age tend to skip past when they're young, because it sounds too simple to matter. Then life gets hard enough, and it becomes the only verse that makes sense. Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. That's 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. King James put it plain. No decoration, just an instruction and a reason. Casting, not folding neatly, not setting down gently with both hands like it's fragile. Casting the way a farmer throws seed wide across a field without expecting to catch it again. The way a fisherman throws his net out into water he can't see the bottom of and trusts it'll come back full. That's the picture. You don't hand your burden to God carefully. You throw it hard, because you're done being careful with something that was never yours to manage in the first place. I think about Earl sometimes, a man I used to know out past Lawrenceburg, who ran cattle on land his father cleared by hand. Earl used to say that worry was the only crop that grew back, no matter how many times you cut it down. He'd work sun up to sundown and still lie awake calculating things he couldn't control. Rain that hadn't come, prices that hadn't set, a sun that hadn't called. One night Earl told me something I never forgot. He said, "I finally figured out I wasn't the one holding the sky up. Never was. I just thought I was, because nobody told me otherwise." That's the trouble most of us carry into our 40s and 50s and beyond. Somewhere along the way, we mistook responsibility for ownership. We started believing that if we didn't hold it, it would fall. The house, the family, the bills, the decisions nobody else wanted to make. So we gripped tighter, year after year, until gripping became the only way we knew how to live. But he careth for you. Not he'll care for you eventually, once you've proven you deserve it. Not he cares for the people who have it together. He careth present tense, already happening, whether you let go or not. That's the part that's hard to accept if you've spent your life earning things, because this isn't earned, it's offered. And offered things don't require your strength to keep existing. They just require your hands to open. There's another passage that sits right alongside this one in Philippians chapter 4. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known unto God. Be careful for nothing. Think about how strange that sounds to a man who was raised to be careful about everything. But the verse isn't asking you to stop caring about your life. It's asking you to stop trying to be the one who carries it. Those are two different things, and most of us confuse them for decades. I think about how a father holds a sleeping child in his arms, the way the weight settles into him, how his arms adjust without him even deciding to adjust them. How the child never once wakes up worried about falling. The child isn't holding on. The father is. That's the whole picture of what casting your care actually looks like. You stop holding on so tightly that you can finally rest in the arms that were already holding you. Psalm 55 says it another way. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. Sustain, not remove the burden entirely, not always. Sometimes the circumstance stays, the diagnosis stays, the empty side of the bed stays. But the sustaining, that's the promise. You don't have to hold up under it alone. I've come to believe that most sleepless nights aren't caused by the problem itself. They're caused by the exhausting work of trying to solve something in the dark that was never meant to be solved by you at 2 a.m., lying flat on your back, staring at a ceiling that has no answers. You can lay it down now, not because you're weak for having carried it this far, because you were never built to carry it forever. Strength was never the same thing as endurance, and endurance was never meant to be permanent. There's a kind of rest that only comes after you finally admit you can't hold something up by sheer will. It's the rest Earl talked about, out on that porch, the summer before he passed, the way his shoulders finally dropped after decades of bracing. He said it felt like setting down a bucket of water he didn't realize he'd been carrying since he was young. That's the invitation tonight. Not to stop caring, just to stop carrying it like it depends on your grip. He careth for you. Let that settle into your chest, the way warm water settles into tired muscle. You don't have to hold this up. You never did. I used to think faith meant carrying things well, carrying them without complaint, without cracking, without letting anyone see the strain in your hands. I know now that's backwards. Faith isn't carrying well. Faith is finally admitting you can't and reaching your arms out anyway, trusting there's someone there to catch what you release. There's an old picture I keep coming back to. A man standing at the edge of a field at dusk, emptying his pockets of stones he'd been gathering all day without realizing it. Worry works that way. You don't decide to pick it up. It just finds its way into your hands, one small stone at a time, until by evening you're carrying more weight than you ever agreed to. The scripture doesn't ask you to explain how the stones got there. It doesn't ask you to justify why you were carrying them so long. It simply says, cast them. Let your hand open. Let gravity do what your grip has been fighting against for years. I think that's why this verse lands differently once you've lived a while. When you're young, you believe you can outplan your way past hardship, that if you just work hard enough, think far enough ahead, you'll never be caught without an answer. But life has a way of humbling that idea. Somewhere in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you start to understand what Earl understood on that porch. You were never meant to outplan the need for grace. You were only ever meant to receive it. And here's the mercy in that. God doesn't need you to hand him a tidy burden. He doesn't ask you to sort it, explain it, or make sense of it before you bring it to him. He just says, cast it, however tangled, however late, however many nights you've already tried to carry it alone. So tonight, whatever's sitting on your chest, the conversation you keep replaying, the decision still unmade, the years that didn't turn out how you pictured, you don't have to solve it before you sleep. You only have to release your grip. He careth for you. That's the whole verse. And it's enough. Let me tell you the rest of what happened with Earl, because I think about it more than almost anything else from those years. I met him the way you meet most men like that, by accident, at a feed store outside of Lawrenceburg, both of us waiting on an order that was running late. He had on a cap that had faded past the point of showing what it once said, and hands that looked like they'd been shaking hands with hard work for 60 years straight. We got to talking about nothing in particular: weather, cattle prices, the kind of small talk men use to feel each other out before they say anything real. It was maybe the third or fourth time I ran into him that he told me about his son. The boy, though he wasn't a boy anymore, closer to 40 by then, had left the farm at 22 and hadn't looked back much since. Moved to Ohio, built a life up there that didn't have much room in it for Tennessee dirt or Sunday dinners or a father who didn't know how to say the things that needed saying. Earl told me they talked maybe 4 times a year, and every one of those calls felt like 2 men standing on opposite banks of a river, shouting things that got lost halfway across. I raised him to be strong, Earl said to me once, staring out past the fence line like he could see all the way back to when the boy was small. Didn't ever teach him it was all right to need somebody. Didn't teach myself that either. Come to think of it, he carried that every night for years, according to what he told me. Not loud grief. Earl wasn't a loud man about anything, but the kind that sits behind your ribs and never quite leaves. The kind that turns into insomnia somewhere around 1 in the morning when the house is too quiet and there's nobody to distract you from it. He used to say the worst part wasn't missing his son. It was the guilt of thinking he'd caused the distance himself by being the kind of father who never once said "I need you" out loud. Not even when his wife passed and the house went half empty overnight. I asked him once, straightforward, whether he'd ever prayed about it. He laughed, not unkindly, just tired. Prayed about everything else my whole life. Crops, weather, money. Never thought to pray about the thing that actually kept me up, that stuck with me. How a man could spend decades handing God the manageable things, the things he probably could have handled on his own anyway, while holding back the one thing that was actually breaking him. Something shifted for Earl the year he turned 71. He got sick, nothing that took him quickly, but enough to scare him into stillness for a few months. And in that stillness, without the farm work to bury himself in, the weight of everything he'd been carrying finally had nowhere left to hide. He told me later that he sat on his porch one night, the kind of clear autumn night where you can hear every sound for a mile, and he just started talking out loud. Not a formal prayer, not anything with the right words in the right order. Just an old man finally admitting, out loud, into the dark, that he was tired of holding the sky up by himself. I told God I didn't know how to fix things with my boy, Earl said. Told him I'd been carrying that failure alone for 20 years because I was too proud to admit I couldn't carry it. And somewhere in the middle of saying all that, out loud, to nobody I could see, I felt it lift. Not the situation. The situation didn't change that night, but the weight of carrying it by myself that lifted. He called his son the next week. Didn't rehearse a speech. Didn't try to fix 20 years in one conversation. Just told him the truth, that he missed him, that he didn't know how to say it before, that he was sorry for the silence he'd let stretch out so long. It didn't heal everything overnight. These things rarely do. But it was a start that never would have happened if Earl hadn't finally set the burden down long enough to let someone else help him carry it, starting with God and eventually with his own son. I think about Earl every time I read that verse in Peter, casting all your care upon him, because Earl's story taught me that most of us don't withhold our burdens from God because we don't believe he can handle them. We withhold them because we've spent our whole lives believing that carrying things alone was the same thing as being strong. It isn't. It never was. You can lay it down now, the way Earl finally did, not with the right words, not with a tidy prayer, just with honesty spoken into the dark. That's all it ever takes. An open hand and a willingness to stop pretending you were built to hold up the whole sky by yourself. I saw Earl a handful of times after that autumn night on his porch. He looked different, not younger, nothing that dramatic, but lighter somehow. The way a man looks when he's finally set something down that he'd been dragging so long, he forgot it had a weight at all. He still worked the same land, still rose before the sun, but there was less bracing in him, less of that quiet, constant tension in his shoulders that I hadn't even noticed until it was gone. His son started visiting more. Not often, but those visits felt different, less like to strangers being polite, more like to men slowly relearning how to sit in the same room. I used to think I had to have it all figured out before I could talk to God about it. Earl told me the last time I saw him, sitting on that same porch. Turns out he wasn't waiting on me to figure it out. He was just waiting on me to show up honest. I think about that phrase more than almost anything else he ever said to me. Show up honest, not show up strong, not show up with the right theology or the perfect prayer, just honest. The kind of honest that admits you've been carrying something too heavy for too long, and you're tired, and you don't know how to fix it, and you're asking for help anyway. Maybe that's what letting go actually looks like, not some dramatic surrender, not a single moment where everything changes all at once, but a quiet decision made in the dark to stop pretending you have it handled. Earl didn't figure out how to repair 20 years of distance with his son in one night on that porch. He just stopped trying to carry the guilt of it alone. Everything after that was slower, smaller, more ordinary, but it started there, with an old man finally admitting he needed help, holding something he'd been holding by himself for far too long. That's the invitation for you tonight, too. Whatever it is you've been carrying quietly, the way Earl carried his, you don't have to have the answer before you bring it to God. You just have to stop pretending you don't need to. Let's pray together now, not a performance, just to people talking honestly to the one who's been waiting all day to listen. Lord, I come to you tonight with my hands still half closed. I want to open them. I want to mean it when I say I'm letting go. But you know how many times I've said that before and taken it right back the moment I felt afraid again. Tonight, help me mean it all the way through. You know what I've been carrying. You've seen every version of it, the version I say out loud, and the quieter version underneath that I haven't told anyone. The worry about money that never fully leaves, even on the good months. The relationship that isn't what it used to be, and I don't know how to fix it, or if it can be fixed. The health that scares me more than I let on. The child who's grown and gone and doesn't call the way I wish they would. The regret from years ago that still shows up at night like it happened yesterday. I've been holding all of it like it's mine to fix. Like if I stop gripping, everything falls apart. But I'm tired, Lord. I'm tired in a way sleep doesn't touch. Because the exhaustion isn't in my body, it's in the part of me that's been trying to be strong for far too long without ever asking for help. So tonight, I'm asking, simply, honestly, the way Earl finally did, out loud, into the dark, with no polished words, just the truth. I cast this care upon you, Lord, not because I fully trust myself to release it all at once, but because you said you'd catch it, and I'm choosing to believe you more than I believe my own fear. Take the worry about tomorrow. I don't know what it holds. I don't know if the thing I'm afraid of will happen or not. But I know you were already there before I arrived at tonight, and you'll already be there when tomorrow comes. I don't have to carry the fear of what hasn't happened yet. Take the guilt I've been holding about the past, the things I said I shouldn't have said, the things I didn't say that I should have, the years I spent building instead of being present, or the years I spent absent when I should have shown up. I can't undo any of it. But I don't have to keep sentencing myself to relive it every night at this hour. You already carried that guilt to the cross. It doesn't belong on my chest anymore. Take the ache for the people I love who feel far away right now, whether by distance or silence, or simply the slow drift that happens over years. I can't force anyone back into closeness. I can't make anyone understand me the way I wish they would. But I trust you with them the way I trust you with myself. Watch over them tonight, wherever they are, the same way I'm asking you to watch over me. Take the fear about my own body, my own aging, my own mortality, the thoughts that creep in at this hour more than any other. When the house is quiet and there's nothing left to distract me from them. I don't know how many nights like this I have left, but I know you've numbered them already, and that you're not afraid of the number, even when I am. Lord, teach me what it means to actually rest in you, not just to say the words "let go" and "let God," but to feel the difference in my chest when I finally stop bracing. Let my shoulders drop the way they drop after a long day's work is finally done. Let my jaw unclench. Let the muscles in my neck, tight from carrying invisible weight all day, finally soften into the pillow. I don't need you to fix everything tonight. I just need you to hold what I can't hold anymore. That's enough. That's always been enough, even when I forgot it. Thank you for staying with me through every night I thought I was facing alone. Thank you for catching what I finally threw, even when my aim was clumsy, even when my faith was smaller than a mustard seed. Thank you for being the kind of God who doesn't need me to have it together before I come to you. You can lay it down now. I hear that, Lord, and I'm choosing to believe it's true. Not just for the people in easier seasons, but for me, tonight, exactly as I am. In the quiet of this hour, in the honesty of this prayer, I release what I've been carrying. Every worry, every regret, every fear I haven't said out loud until now. It's yours. It was always meant to be yours. I know I'll wake up tomorrow and some of this will try to climb back into my hands. That's just how it works. Worry doesn't stay gone because I prayed once. So Lord, give me the strength to release it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day I need to. For as long as it takes to unlearn a lifetime of gripping too tightly. I think about Earl again, Lord, how he said it took him 71 years to finally understand he wasn't holding the sky up. I don't want to wait that long. I don't want to spend decades bracing against weight I was never meant to carry alone. So teach me now, tonight, at whatever age I am, however many years I've already spent white-knuckling my way through hard seasons. It's not too late to learn this. It was never too late. Help me remember, in the ordinary moments tomorrow, in traffic, in meetings, in the quiet moments folding laundry or driving home, that casting my care on you isn't a one-time prayer. It's a posture, a daily choice to open my hands again, even after they've closed back up out of habit. And Lord, for the people I love who are carrying their own weight tonight, wherever they are, the ones I know are struggling and the ones I don't even know are struggling, hold them too. Let them find, in their own time, the same relief I'm asking for tonight. Let someone be patient with them the way I need you to be patient with me. I don't have all the answers I wish I had walking into tomorrow. I don't know how every situation resolves, but I know you do, and for tonight, that has to be enough. That is enough. Quiet my mind now, Lord. Slow my breathing. Let this prayer be the last heavy thing I carry today. And let sleep be the rest you promised. Not because I earned it, but because you already gave it. Amen. There's a psalm that men my age come back to more than any other, not because it's complicated, but because it says exactly what we need to hear when the noise of the day finally goes quiet. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Read that slowly, not as a verse you memorized as a child, reciting it without weight. Read it as a grown man, tired, carrying decades of decisions and disappointments and small victories nobody clapped for. He maketh me to lie down. Not I forced myself to rest, because I finally ran out of options. He maketh me. There's a shepherd's hand behind the stillness, not just your own exhaustion. I think about what it takes to make a sheep lie down. Anyone who's spent time around livestock knows a sheep won't rest if it's afraid, if it's hungry, if there's tension anywhere in the flock. It has to feel safe enough first. Someone has to clear the field of threat before the sheep can lower itself into the grass and stop watching the tree line. That's what he's doing for you right now, if you'll let him. Clearing the field, quieting the threats that felt so loud 3 hours ago, at dinner, in traffic, in that argument that's still replaying in your mind. He leadeth me beside the still waters, not the rapids, not the flood, the still water, the kind you can actually drink from without it knocking you over. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Restoreth, present tense, again, like that verse in Peter. Not he restored my soul once, years ago, and I've been running on that ever since. Restoreth, an ongoing work, happening again tonight. In this room, in this hour, whether you feel it yet or not. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I used to think this verse was about dying. I don't think that anymore. I think it's about every valley, the diagnosis, the empty chair at the table, the year everything fell apart at once, the nights the fear gets loud enough that you can't tell if you're going to make it through until morning. Through the valley, not stuck in it forever. Through it, there's an exit on the other side, even when you can't see it from where you're standing. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. A shepherd's tools weren't for punishment. The rod fought off what threatened the sheep. The staff pulled it back from the edge when it wandered too close to danger. Comfort, not correction for correction's sake. God's discipline in your life was never about making you feel small. It was always about keeping you close enough to stay safe. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Think about that image for a second. A table, set, calm, unhurried, while trouble is still standing right there, watching. That's not the absence of hardship. That's peace in the middle of it. You don't have to wait for every enemy, every worry, every unresolved conflict to disappear before you're allowed to sit down and rest. The table is already set. The oil is already poured. The cup is already full, regardless of what's still standing at the edges of the room. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Follow, not just wait for you at the finish line, way off in some distant future. Follow right behind you, right now, in this ordinary Tuesday or Thursday or whatever tired night this happens to be for you. Goodness and mercy, walking the same road you're walking, close enough to reach. You can lay it down now. This psalm was never meant to be recited. It was meant to be lived in, the way you'd walk into a familiar house and finally exhale. I think about how many times in my own life I've said this psalm without actually hearing it, mumbled it at a funeral, recited it as a child in Sunday school without understanding a single line of what it meant. It took years of hard nights before the words started landing where they were supposed to land. In the chest, not just in the memory. There's something about asterisk I shall not want asterisk that used to bother me, if I'm honest. It sounded like a promise that didn't match my life because I have wanted plenty of times. Wanted more time with people who are gone now. Wanted decisions to have gone differently. Wanted peace that took decades longer to arrive than I would have chosen. But I've come to understand the verse differently now. It isn't a promise that you'll never want for anything. It's a promise that whatever you need to keep walking forward, comfort, direction, strength, for one more day, the shepherd already has it, even on the nights it doesn't feel that way. Green pastures don't happen by accident either. A shepherd has to search them out, walk ahead of the flock, find the safe ground before leading anyone onto it. That's not a passive picture. That's a God who goes ahead of you into tomorrow before you even wake up to face it, clearing what needs clearing, preparing what needs preparing, long before you're aware anything needed preparing at all. And the valley, that word gets used so often it can lose its weight. But think about an actual valley. Low ground, shadowed, because the light from the surrounding hills doesn't reach all the way down. Narrow enough that you can't always see what's ahead or behind. That's grief. That's fear. That's the season after a diagnosis, or a divorce, or a loss that reshapes everything. And still, asterisk, I will fear no evil. Asterisk, not because the valley isn't real, but because you're not walking it by yourself. Whatever valley you're in tonight, however long you've been walking it, however far from the exit it feels, thou art with me. That's the whole psalm, distilled into 4 words. Not, you're strong enough to get through it. With me. Presence, not performance. That's the rest being offered to you tonight. Let me speak plainly to you now, the way I'd speak to a friend sitting across the porch from me. Both of us too tired to dress anything up in fancy words. You did enough today. I know it doesn't feel that way. I know you're running through the list right now. What you didn't finish, what you said wrong, what you should have handled better. Let that list go. It doesn't get to decide your worth tonight. You are not behind. You are not failing just because your life doesn't look like someone else's highlight reel. You are exactly where you are, and that's allowed to be enough for tonight. You don't have to carry it anymore. Say that to yourself, quietly, the way you'd say something true. Not a wish, a fact. You don't have to carry it anymore. Not the version of the future you're afraid of. Not the version of the past you can't change. Just this moment, this breath, this quiet room. Your worth was never in what you produced today. It was never in the calls you made, the tasks you crossed off, the person you managed to be for everyone else. You are loved the same on your best day and your worst one. That hasn't changed since you were young, and it won't change tonight. You are allowed to rest without earning it first. I know that sentence is hard for some of you. Rest was never modeled for you as something you deserved, only something you took once everything else was handled. But everything is never fully handled. There's always one more thing. So if you wait for the list to be empty before you let yourself rest, you'll wait your whole life. Rest now. The list will still be there tomorrow, and so will you, and that's enough. You are safe right now, in this exact moment, even if tomorrow is uncertain. Even if next week holds something you're afraid of, right now, in this room, in this bed, you are safe. Let your body believe that, even before your mind catches up. He is already watching over you. Not starting tonight. Not because you finally prayed hard enough. He's been watching over you the whole time. Through the years you didn't notice. Through the seasons you thought you were facing alone. Through every 2 a.m. you assumed nobody saw. He saw. He was there. You don't have to check on him the way you check on everything else in your life. Making sure it's still standing, still working, still holding together. He doesn't need checking on. He's steady in a way nothing else in your life has ever been. Not your health, not your finances, not the people you love most. Steady, even when everything around you shifts. You are allowed to stop performing strength, even for yourself. Especially for yourself. You don't have to prove anything to the ceiling tonight. You don't have to have your emotions in order before you're allowed to feel them. If you're grieving something, a person, a version of your life you thought you'd have, a relationship that ended differently than you hoped, you're allowed to grieve it tonight without also trying to fix it tonight. Some things just need to be felt before they can be healed. You are not the sum of your mistakes. You are not the worst decision you ever made, replayed on a loop at this hour more nights than you'd like to admit. You are a person still being shaped, still being loved, still being carried, even now. You are not too old to change, to set in your ways to grow, too far down one road to turn onto another. Whatever season of life you're in, raising kids, watching them leave, caring for aging parents, facing retirement, facing illness, facing simply the slow, unfamiliar territory of getting older, you are still being written into. The story isn't finished. You are not a closed book just because you're not young anymore. You can lay it down now. Every version of that sentence, the guilt, the fear, the ache, the exhaustion, set it down. Not because it disappears, because it was never meant to be held by you alone, not for one more night. There's more I want to walk through with you about what it actually looks like to wake up tomorrow and not immediately pick everything back up the way you always do. About how to keep your hands open in daylight, not just in the dark. But that's a conversation for another quiet hour. Tonight, just rest. Tonight, that's the only assignment you have. You don't have to understand everything to be at peace tonight. You don't have to have the plan figured out, the relationship repaired, the diagnosis resolved, the finances sorted before you're allowed to close your eyes in peace. Peace was never waiting on the outcome. It was waiting on you to stop bracing for one. You are not weak for being tired. You are not failing for needing rest. The strongest men I've ever known were the ones who finally learned how to sit still, how to let someone else carry something for a while, how to say, "I don't have this handled," without shame in their voice. You are allowed to need help. That includes tonight. That includes this prayer, this quiet room, this moment where you're letting someone else's words carry you toward sleep, because your own thoughts have been too loud for too long. Needing help was never the opposite of strength. I used to think it was, that a real man handled things quietly, alone, without ever letting the weight show. I know better now. The strongest thing you can do tonight isn't gritting your teeth through another sleepless hour. It's admitting, honestly, that you need rest you can't manufacture on your own. If there's a face in your mind right now, someone you love, someone you've lost, someone you're worried about, let them rest in his hands too. You weren't meant to hold everyone up by yourself either. You were only ever meant to love them and let God do the holding. You are not too far gone for grace. Whatever you did, whatever you didn't do, whatever regret keeps circling back at this hour, grace was built for exactly this moment. Not for the version of you with everything figured out. For this version, tired, honest. Here, let your hands stay open tonight. Even if they close again tomorrow out of habit. Even if you have to remind yourself again and again tonight, just let them stay open. You did enough. You are enough. You can rest now. Let's be quiet together for a while now. Not silence in the sense of nothing being said, but silence in the sense of nothing needing to be figured out. Just breath, just presence, just the slow settling of a body that's finally allowed to stop. Breathe in, slowly, for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and let it out, even slower. 5, 6, 7, 8. Feel your shoulders drop half an inch further into the mattress. You don't have to hold them up anymore tonight. Picture, if you will, an old farmhouse at the edge of a field, somewhere in the middle of the country, far from any city glow. The porch light is off. The family inside has gone to bed hours ago. There's a single lamp still burning in an upstairs window, not because anyone's awake worrying, but because someone forgot to turn it off. And it doesn't matter tonight. Nothing needs fixing tonight. Outside, the field stretches out toward a tree line you can barely make out in the dark. Somewhere past it, a creek moves slowly over stones worn smooth by decades of water that never asked permission to keep flowing. It doesn't rush. It doesn't hurry toward the river it's eventually going to reach. It just moves, patient, the way rest moves through a body that's finally stopped fighting it. Breathe in again. 4 counts. Hold for 1. Let it go for 8. Feel the weight in your jaw finally loosen. You've been clenching something all day. A decision, a worry, a sentence you didn't say, and you don't have to hold on to it through the night, too. There's a porch swing on that old farmhouse, chains creaking faintly with the breeze, moving on its own even though no one's sitting in it. It doesn't need anyone to keep it moving. It just sways, slow and steady. The way you're breathing is starting to sway now, in and out, without you having to think about each one. Somewhere further off, an owl calls once, and then goes quiet again. Not urgent, not a warning, just a sound that belongs to the night, the way your tiredness belongs to today, the way rest belongs to you right now. There's a well-worn path leading from the porch steps down toward the barn. Packed earth, smoothed by years of the same feet, walking it, morning and evening, season after season. Nobody's walking it tonight. It just waits there in the dark, patient, the way rest waits for you even when you forget to take it. Let your hands unclench wherever they're resting. Let your feet go heavy, sinking further into the sheets. There's nothing left to hold on to tonight. Nothing left to carry. Just this breath, and the one after it, and the one after that. Picture the field again. Moonlight resting on the tall grass, silver and quiet, the way it's rested on that same field for longer than anyone alive can remember. The grass doesn't strain to catch the light. It just receives it, still, unhurried, the way you're receiving this rest right now, without having to earn a single second of it. Somewhere near the fence line, an old dog sleeps on the porch, one ear twitching faintly at some far-off sound, not enough to wake it, just enough to show it's safe. resting, unbothered by whatever's out past the tree line. That's the kind of rest being offered to you tonight. Aware, but unafraid. Present, but unburdened. Breathe in, for counts. And out, slow, for 8. Let your mind go quiet, the way that field goes quiet after the last light in the house finally goes dark. You can lay it down now. Whatever thought is still trying to surface, a worry about tomorrow, a memory from years ago, a name you haven't said out loud in a while, let it drift past like the creek drifts past those worn stones. It doesn't need your attention right now. It'll still be there tomorrow if it needs to be. Tonight, you're allowed to let it pass. Feel the stillness settling deeper now. Not the stillness of forcing yourself to be calm. The stillness that comes after you've finally stopped fighting for control of something that was never fully yours to control in the first place. There's a barn further out past the field, weathered grey, the kind that's stood through more storms than anyone bothered to count. Inside, everything's put away for the night, tools hung on their hooks, the tractor parked and quiet, nothing left half finished that needs tending to before morning. That's what tonight can be for you too. Everything put away, everything set down in its place, nothing left half finished that has to be solved before you're allowed to rest. Breathe in again, slowly, for counts, and let it go, even slower, for 8. Feel your chest rise and fall with less effort each time, the way a body settles when it finally trusts it's safe enough to stop being on guard. The house on that field is quiet. The porch swing has slowed to almost nothing. The creek keeps moving, patient, unbothered. The way Grace moves through a life, slow, constant, never in a hurry, never asking you to keep up. Somewhere in that stillness, a clock ticks softly on a mantle, marking time that doesn't require anything of you tonight. Not productivity, not decisions, just the passing of minutes, gentle and unremarkable, carrying you closer to morning without you having to do a single thing to get there. Let your breathing settle into its own rhythm now, without counting, without effort, in and out. Just that, nothing more required of you tonight. If a thought rises, something unfinished, something you're worried about, some name or face that surfaces uninvited, let it pass the way a cloud passes over that quiet field, casting a brief shadow and then moving on, taking nothing with it, leaving nothing behind but the same still ground it moved across. You can lay it down now, all of it, the whole day, the whole week, if it's been that kind of week. Let it settle into the quiet, the way dust settles after a long day's work is finally, fully done. Rest now. You're not alone in this stillness. You never were. Before we close tonight, I want to leave you with something simple. You didn't come here by accident. Whatever led you to this video, the sleepless nights, the weight you've been carrying quietly, the search for something that finally felt honest instead of performative, I believe that search was already being led, even before you knew what you were looking for. Let go and let God. Not as a bumper sticker phrase, not as something you say and immediately forget, but as a practice you return to, night after night, until your hands finally learn what it means to stay open instead of clenched. I think about Earl often, still, about a man who spent decades believing that strength meant carrying everything alone, and how much of his life could have looked different if he'd learned sooner what he finally learned at 71, that the weight was never his, to hold by himself. I hope you don't have to wait as long as he did. I hope tonight is the night something in you finally exhales. I think about how his son started calling more, how the two of them slowly relearned how to sit in the same room without needing to fill every silence with something safe to talk about. None of that would have happened if Earl had kept holding the guilt by himself, the way he'd held it for 20 years before that night on the porch. Letting go didn't just change Earl's nights. It changed the rest of his life, and the years he had left with people he loved. Maybe that's true for you too, in ways you can't fully see yet. Maybe there's a relationship waiting on the other side of you, finally setting this weight down. Maybe there's a version of rest, of peace, of presence with the people you love that's been waiting on you to stop trying to carry everything by yourself. You can lay it down now. Say it to yourself one more time, quietly, the way you'd say something you're finally starting to believe. You can lay it down now, not because the situation resolved, not because the fear disappeared, but because you were never meant to hold it up by your own strength in the first place. If you found this at exactly the right moment, if something about tonight's words settled into a place that's been aching for a while, I hope you'll come back. Not because you need to prove anything by returning, but because some nights are heavier than others, and it helps to have somewhere familiar to land when they are. Subscribing simply means you'll find your way back here easier on the nights you need it most. There's a particular kind of quiet that settles over a house once everyone inside has finally stopped fighting the day. That's what I want for you right now. Not the forced stillness of trying hard to relax, but the real thing, the kind that comes when you finally set something down that you've been carrying so long you forgot how heavy it was. I think about the years it took me to learn this myself. How many nights I spent bracing against something I couldn't control, convinced that if I just thought about it hard enough, planned for it carefully enough, I could out-strategize whatever was keeping me up. It never worked, not once. The only thing that ever actually worked was the same thing Earl finally learned on that porch, saying it out loud, honestly, and letting the weight transfer to hands that were always steadier than mine. Wherever you are tonight, in a bed that feels too big, in a house that's gone quiet in ways you're still adjusting to, in a season that doesn't look like what you expected your life to look like by now, you are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are exactly where grace can reach you. He careth for you. Not the version of you with everything figured out. This version, tired, honest, here, in the dark, listening to one more voice before sleep finally takes over. Let your breathing stay slow. Let your body stay heavy against the mattress. Let whatever thought is still lingering finally lose its grip, the way thoughts do when the body's more tired than the mind wants to admit. You can lay it down now, the worry, the regret, the version of tomorrow you're afraid of, the weight of today that felt too heavy to carry alone. Lay all of it down, right here, in this quiet room, and trust that it's being held by hands far steadier than yours. I don't know everything you're carrying tonight. I don't know the specific shape of your worry, or whose name keeps surfacing in your mind, or what decision is still sitting unresolved somewhere in your chest. But I know the God who's listening does, and I know He's not asking you to have it figured out before you're allowed to rest. He's only asking you to trust Him with what you can't carry any further tonight. If there's a season coming, one you're dreading, one you're not sure you have the strength for, I want you to know you won't face it the way you're imagining right now. Alone, in the dark, running through every possible outcome. You'll face it the way you're facing tonight. Held, steadied, not by your own strength, but by the same hands that have carried you through every hard season before this one. Goodness and mercy are following you tonight, the way they've followed you every night before this one, whether you noticed or not. Sleep now, rest now. You've done enough for today. May God bless your night with peace and the quiet assurance that He is watching over you. You can lay it down now. Good night, and God bless.